Hello everyone, this is Dr. Lashik, and in this chapter we're going to start off by talking about the difference between research producers and research consumers. Before we can talk about the difference between research producers and research consumers, we have to understand what empiricism means. Empiricism is a process that all psychologists use. It's what they use, what they basically base their conclusions off of. And these conclusions are based off of systematic observations. So all claims in psychology courses that you hear are based on empiricism, systematic observations, not intuition. Now let's discuss the difference between research producers and research consumers. Producers are those who do the research. They might be studying brain anatomy, observing behavior, or analyzing data. They are the research scientists and the professors that exist in the psychology world. Consumers, on the other hand, take what the producers have created and attempt to apply it to their job or life or something in the real world. We are all research consumers. You are all especially research consumers because you are taking this course right now. So getting a psychology education makes you a research consumer. There's probably a small group of you in this class who wish to become research producers in your future. Those of you who do desire to become research producers are probably on the track where graduate school is in your future. Also, this class will be very important for you because much of what you learn in this class will be applicable to your future job. Additionally, I would recommend becoming a research assistant for a professor for even more exposure to the research process. I would recommend becoming a research assistant whether or not you want to be a producer or a consumer of research, because becoming a research assistant allows you the opportunity to get a new type of relationship with one of your professors, where not only do you learn more about the research process, but you are working with them in such a capacity that you have the potential to get a great letter of recommendation for future graduate school application purposes or even a future job. If you are going to become a consumer of research in your future, this information in this class is still very pertinent. Psychology majors, for example, are expected to produce APA-style papers and understand the research process. And that is what this class will teach you. Additionally, you will need to read primary sources. And you have to understand, A, what a primary source is. You have to know how to be critical of that source and know what questions to ask about it when you're being critical. For example, let's say we read some information on the internet. Usually this information that we're reading, if it's like from Wikipedia or a news source, it's those writers' interpretation of an empirical study. And oftentimes those writers don't have the background or knowledge base or don't have a psychology degree. And oftentimes because of that, it's just simply inaccurate. It would be like one of us, or a psychologist, trying to interpret a biology article for a newspaper, probably a little bit inaccurate without intending to be. So how do we as consumers tell whether or not that internet information is accurate? We have to understand the research process, and that will definitely help us. So no matter the job type that you hope to get in your future, almost everything you will do will be a practice based on some previous research. Therapists, for instance, must use what's called evidence-based practices. In other words, therapies that have been supported in the past by research before they can be used with clients. If you decide to go into the world of business, many of your decisions or the decisions that you are taught to do are based on statistics. So you must be able to interpret statistics to do what you are supposed to do accurately. In other words, the things that you will learn in this class, no matter what job you will get in the future or what your future plans are, you will apply that knowledge to that job. So let's talk about a quick example that's based on the picture on this slide. It's an example called facilitated communication. Let's pretend that we are a facilitator and we work with people who have autism. And we are a caregiver, and we want to expand our knowledge on better ways in which to communicate with our patients. And so we look up and we hear about this new technique called facilitated communication. And this is where people with autism and other disabilities, which impair communication, where they are aided by a caregiver to communicate by typing on this keyboard, or in the picture as it shows on something like a tablet of some sort. And this is where the caring facilitator would guide the person's hand on that keyboard. And we are debating whether or not we are going to attend a conference where they teach the attendees this practice. So before paying all the money to go to this conference, we want to do some research on the topic to see if it's even worth our time. And what we discover after doing our research is that there is refutable evidence. Some scientists who are debating whether or not this practice of facilitated communication is effective have done some tests on it. And they thought that maybe the facilitator is unconsciously guiding the patient's hand. And so to test this, they run an experiment. They show one picture to the patient and a separate picture to the facilitator, and one maybe pictures like of a bicycle, the others of like an ice cream cone. And they ask the patient to please type what they see. And what they found after running this experiment was that every time they asked them to type it, only the picture that the facilitator saw was ever relayed to the experimenters, meaning that the facilitator must have accidentally been unconsciously guiding the patient's hand when assisting them. So in other words, what can we conclude from this? Well, we'd probably do a lot more research and find all the different evidence for and against this type of practice before we made our decision. But if we ended up finding a lot of evidence that refuted it, like the one we just found, then there is no scientific evidence that this practice works. And maybe we shouldn't waste our money on that conference because of that. And so that's why it's just so important to be a good consumer of research, even if you don't end up producing it in your future. This class will be important for you no matter what job you go into.